Emmett.
I
He's
know.
been missing.
He has been missing.
Maybe
Must
he's
suck to be
dead.
him.
That would suck.
That would suck, however, I also doubt it. Alright,
yeah,
so
but,
today we're going to be talking about Eastern versus Western writing styles because I had it suggested last time, and I'm always happy to take your suggestions and make them a reality for lessons. So,
you read it for?
Then make one.
feel free to give suggestions. If I already have done a lesson on it, then just know that I will direct you to the proper video. If I have not, then I'm more than happy to do it the next week. So feel free to always suggest lessons. I'm more than happy to take suggestions. All right.
So, oh my gosh, you guys are insane.
It's so fun.
I love you, but you're insane.
Thank you.
Yep. Anytime, man. I will gladly call you insane. Anytime.
Yeah.
You're like, this is my job now.
I'm coming.
I'm the official devil's advocate.
Oh, yep.
doing the limbo.
All right.
Not the limbo. What's it called?
Cat.
The limbo. The limbo.
Okay.
So
Limbo.
we're going to be talking about the differences between Western trends in stylistic trends in writing and Eastern
Yes!
stylistic trends in writing.
I love Eastern things. Look at
Yes.
all
There is
my
a lot to love, and there's also a
anime
lot to
gear.
love about Western things too. Honestly, both have their merits. That's why we love them both for different reasons. You also might lean more towards one or the other because it might speak to you a little bit more.
This speaks to me.
So as a result, we're going to be talking about some of the reasons why that might be today. All right. So first off, we're going to go with the main premise of the story. The main premise of the story in Western tends to be heavy on the conflict, which is to say that it's heavy either on the intensity of the drama. Oh no, so-and-so died, but she was secretly cheating on so-and-so. Gasp! That's definitely more westernized. With the heavy conflict, heavy action, heavy logic, heavy strategy, makes you think, makes you go, is this a puzzle that I have to solve?
There's this one show called Link Click though, and that's literally that.
Exactly, because that's the Western writing style.
It's Eastern though.
That is funny.
Plot
A lot of
Just
so the funny
because
thing-
it's
I was
originally
gonna
Western
say.
doesn't mean it can't be an Eastern.
and both too.
I'm just saying.
I gotta say, a
From
lot.
Eastern.
We have also influenced a lot of each other's cultures too.
Oh, yeah.
So there are a lot of animes and things like that that are typically more Eastern written that have been written for a more Western audience, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
they gave us dragons. We made them cooler, but they gave us dragons.
You like dragons though. Anyway, so that being said, Western also tends to be more of an intellectual journey. I'm tired, so I'm making sure that I'm spelling it right because I'm suddenly questioning myself.
That's Link Click. It's Eastern though.
Like I said, we
breaking
influence
the
each
rules.
other. It does break the rules, and that's part of why it's important to learn the stylistic trends and rules, because then when you break the rules, people go, ooh, that's cool.
Link Click is so cool.
Exactly, because in some ways it defies your typical expectations for a Easternized show.
Like time traveling detectives,
Fancy.
except they're kind of like it has so much. Sorry, the consequences. It's so real and grounded because like there are consequences for their actions. They can't just like change time and be like, well, oh no, it's like people die if they change time.
No,
So-
exactly.
It's not like Back to the Future. How?
So, funnily enough,
What?
Just saying.
What
so
is Back to the
funnily enough,
Future?
You
anyway.
don't know what Back to the Future is?
Focus, please.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was.
These
focused.
discussions can be had later. Or you can glare at each other secretly and have a silent discussion. All right.
I refuse
Um,
to look at that.
Anyway, so that being said, in contrast, Eastern trends tend to be, like I said, this can be broken out of, but it tends to be the case, that it is more character heavy and more character driven. Rather than being more plot driven, more conflict driven, it is more character driven.
Yeah.
And it has a much more intense relationship with their emotional
Hunter
journey.
x Hunter.
So as a result, one, typically, and like I said, this doesn't always happen, but Western tends to be more of an intellectual, let's solve this journey, whereas Eastern is a lot more of an emotional, let's get through this and develop as a person journey. A great example of this is Avatar: The Last Airbender. you will notice that a lot of the journeys they have to go through are not intellectual. They have a couple things they need to solve or a couple puzzles they run into, but overall it's about their emotional state as
Aang
characters.
doesn't want to kill this man.
Exactly, he doesn't want to kill him, and therefore he has this moral quandary, and he's dealing with all these emotions inside of him. And freaking everyone else has an emotional journey too. Zuko being the most intense
my
emotional
gosh,
journey
I
I've ever
love
been through.
Zuko.
The point being that every single character in there has an emotional journey they're going through.
Sokka's emotional journey is not being able to eat meat sometimes.
I want to eat you because you're meat, but you're also cute meat. I'm confused. Yes, that is.
Sokka.
He is awesome. But yes, another part that is very interesting is the fact that even if there is a villain introduced in Eastern literature, there is often, as I just mentioned, the moral debate. And it tends to be the case that the villains in Eastern literature tend to be someone that either is pure evil, kind of like in Avatar The Last Airbender, where he's just wanting to murder everyone and take over everything. But then the hero has to go through the moral debate dealing with the villain. Or alternatively, a great example of this is, oh shoot, now I can't remember the title.
Wing click.
Nope. I was
Hunter
thinking-
x Hunter.
all I can think of is the character's name, which is Light Yagami.
Oh, Death Note.
Thank you. I was like,
I'm sorry.
I don't have
I know that one.
Yes,
I know that one.
But yes, he's a great example of a villain that causes a moral debate, right? Because of the fact that technically he's doing a service for the world. He is killing bad people.
You
But
shouldn't
also-
kill people though.
But you shouldn't kill people though.
You shouldn't write down the
that
names
to
of your
John Wick,
enemies
man.
in the Death Note.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why it's a moral debate,
what?
because a lot of people are like, technically he's getting rid of bad guys, but also he is still murdering people.
That is a bad guy trait. You
And
shouldn't
so-
murder people.
And so as a result of that, it kind of makes you have this moral ambiguity that you're kind of like thinking about deeper concepts. And that is the same thing with Eastern literature. All right, the next thing that is different about these two, because this one often has less of a moral debate and more of an intellectual debate, like how are we going to defeat them. Meanwhile, the next thing that we want to focus on is happily ever after. Yay! AGA, just for short.
You know what doesn't have a happily ever after? Hunter x Hunter.
But
It's so sad.
that's the interesting thing, is what we're going to talk about, is that with Western, it tends to focus on either happily ever after, or even if it is a tragedy, there is hope and light after the tragedy, right?
Oh!
They're able to be like, oh, we went through this really, really hard thing, but we're going to try and do our best to, get through it together, kind of thing. Whereas in Eastern literature, there is a very intense trend of the fact that you can't escape the horror and tragedy. The horror and tragedy is a part of life.
Oh my gosh, link click. Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I just discovered it. It's so good.
Yes. We can tell. But anyway, I love your enthusiasm. So, the horror and the tragedy is inescapable in Eastern literature. Yes, you can ultimately move past it and move through it, but it isn't about hope. It's about dealing with the hard times because it's a part of life. Instead of being like, oh, we have to focus on the good, you're going, life does suck sometimes, but that doesn't mean we can't keep moving past it. And so as a result, it's a very different way of looking at things. Another thing that makes it interesting that is on a very similar note is that with Western literature, we tend to focus on what can we change about our lives to turn it into light. What can we do to change about the darkness to make it bright? What can we do to change it into what we want it to be? Whereas Eastern is a lot more about accepting what we have and being grateful for what we have and knowing that yes, there is darkness in this world. Yes, there is shadows. Yes, there is problems. But it's about accepting it and looking inward instead of outward. Instead of looking at what can we change about the world, it's about what can I change about myself to deal with this dark world. And and so as a result, it's a very drastically different concept. One is about accepting, like I said, the darkness and being like, the world's dark, but what can we do about it? But what can I do about it for myself? Whereas the other is, how can I change the whole world to bring light to the whole world? one is
That's
a lot more exactly. One's a lot more intense and all encompassing, whereas the other one's like, I can't do a lot, but I can do what I can do. All right.
The next thing.
This is such a fun vibe. We should do this every time.
Honestly, that's your choice. I'm not gonna say no.
It's so fun.
All right. 1 second, making sure that I'm scrolling down properly in my list because it's a lot of things. All right.
So the other fun thing about this is that it does have a drastically different hero's journey. Generally, it's a singular hero in Western that has friends who assist him along the way. Whereas in Eastern, it's 99% of the time a main character, but they could never do it without their team.
Slay.
And so this
One
is
Piece?
very similar to
Pirate Crew.
I was gonna say One Piece. You have
Yeah.
Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like there are always teams generally in Eastern literature, and they're saying, hey, yeah. Is there a singular hero in Western literature? For example, Harry Potter. He has Hermione, he has Ron. They are helpful, but ultimately it's his journey alone, right? He has to defeat Voldemort by himself, ultimately. They just help him get there. Whereas with the Eastern literature, without Sokka and Katara and Zuko and all those guys, Aang never would have been able to do what he did.
Aang would have still been stuck in the ice, man.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Exactly. He needed his team. And even after he got out of the ice, if he had
liked
just been like, thanks, I gotta do this by myself, bro, he would have died. Like, they helped him every step of the way and helped him to get there.
He would have been boiled alive at Kyoshi Island, man.
Exactly. Like, they helped him, and ultimately it was about their team. Even if it was a singular point of view main character story, it still had this aspect of the team is what makes this work.
So it's a very interesting kind of idea. One is, you can change the world by yourself, and the other is you can change the world, but you need some help.
Yeah.
Don't do it on your own. Which in some ways,
Facts.
Personally, is I think why I sometimes gravitate towards Eastern more than Western, because I enjoy the
love
whole
Eastern.
you can change the world by yourself. It's a cool idea, but at the same time, you need to know when to ask for help, and that's a very healthy thing to do.
Yes, it is.
It's important.
That's what Hunter x Hunter.
You're just like all of the references. All right. So next one, in Western, dialogue serves so many purposes in Western literature. It can serve the purpose of conveying world information. It can serve the purpose of conveying emotional information. It can serve the purpose of conveying the character's thought process. It can serve the purpose of telling us exactly how the hero needs to get from point A to point B. Dialogue does a lot. It is a heavy lifter. If you had to, give a body type to every single thing in Western literature, dialogue would be the big, buff, muscly guy who can just lift like 2 tons. Like, it does a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas in Eastern literature, it is very fascinating because if I were to give a body type to that,
I would say it'd be much more of a dancer or a rogue. Very much more finesse to their dialogue, because their dialogue is a lot more subtle. It is a lot more about looking into the depth of emotions via subtlety, via minor cues that you might not even see. You kind of like I said with the dancer or rogue. There's the, sleight of hand illusion that rogues do, and they steal your stuff, and you don't even realize that they've stolen 5 things off your person. It's the same thing with dialogue. You may not even realize that it's foreshadowing 5 different things in that dialogue because it just feels like beautiful, gorgeous dialogue.
Except
And then
for
later
Harry
you're like,
Potter.
oh my gosh. There's so much foreshadowing there. And so as a result, the dialogue plays a different role in our different types of literature. Like I said, one is much more like it does a ton, and the other is much more like it serves its exact, specific finesse purpose.
I think that's really cool because there was this roundabout, foreshadowing crazy moment in this anime called Doctor Stone.
I've heard of that one.
It's really good. It
All right.
was wild, though.
So, the funny thing also that is different about dialogue is that Eastern tends to have a lot more internal dialogue, whereas Western tends to be
internal
a lot
monologues.
less internal. Like, yes, do they have internal thoughts? But if you open up an Eastern written book, you'll notice that there will be an intense amount of internal monologues. But if you open a Western book, there might be a thought or two on the page.
Except for Keep It Velocity, she
That's
thinks
fair.
a lot.
She does think a lot. Well, I think she was definitely influenced by some Eastern literature, though, because there's definitely some vibes there. But that's why I say, like, if you want to take any of these from either side and blend them together, go for it. That's what makes it so interesting, is
I
that
like it.
even though this is the overarching concept and the overarching concept, that doesn't mean you can't mix and mesh what you want. That's the beauty about learning. It's kind of like when you learn all of the cooking techniques for a specific dish and another specific dish, and then you go, hey, what if I like threw these together?
That's
Made it
how,
better.
Like, a bunch of, like, I've always wondered how people discover recipes. That's
Yeah.
basically it.
That's basically it. They learn one technique, they learn another technique, and then they go, what if we like squish these together? And it works. So the other fun thing about dialogue with Eastern is that it often also shows their culture. Their culture is very important here, whereas society is more important in Western writing. Western is typically about how will society view us, how will society feel about this, whereas with Eastern it's more about how will our cultures blend together. Will our cultures work together well? Will your parents hate me because they're of a different culture? It's not about society's thing, it's about your specific culture and how they feel about it. Kind of like with Aang and Katara. They have drastically different cultures because they're from drastically different places. And so as a result, they do have some things that they argue about because it's a cultural difference. And so it's quite fascinating to have different culture versus a societal difference. It's also interesting because in Western, because we have such a high focus on societal differences, cultural differences we often just go meh, we don't really care about. Whereas in Eastern, culture is king. You don't disrespect someone else's culture, you don't disrespect your elders, you don't disrespect pretty much anyone. It's about respect.
Yeah.
Whereas with Western, it's perfectly acceptable to be like, I hate your culture.
But
And that's not okay. First of all, that's not okay. Let's talk about this. Not okay. But that doesn't mean that it's not how Western unfortunately views it. They go, hey, your culture's weird, therefore I don't like it. It's like, that's rude.
Yeah,
And it's not okay. But at the same time, having it so that you're so stuck on your culture that you hate other people because they are, like, for whatever reason different from your culture is not okay either. They both have their bad sides and they both have their benefits too. Hello. Feel free to find a chair or a cushion because apparently we're doing cushions today. I don't know how this happened.
So fun. You can bring some chairs over. You just have to bring them through my fort, and I can get out for a little.
I can get out for a little. Y'all are
Do you want
hilarious.
a drawing thing?
Me?
Oh, Arabelle would have had so much fun. Like, I thought about bringing her, but then decided that she'd be bored. But no, like, and then you guys chose today to build forts.
Today to build forts.
What were you gonna bring?
Yeah, today. My little sister Arabelle.
Slay!
Yeah, because everyone else was gone.
You
It
should
was so
definitely
fun.
bring your little sister.
Yes.
This is so much fun.
Anyway, I mean,
that
like, if
being
y'all
said-
build forts next time, sure.
I'll build a fort next time. I did.
love the enthusiasm in this
Wait.
room right now.
Oh, that's the thing. What about? Sorry, I'll ask this after.
Sounds good. All right.
Come in.
Whoa.
Got it.
kind of.
Wait, I have to get out.
Dang. All right. We're going to take a quick intermission
Only
break
not
while
with
we
the forks.
rearrange the room, apparently. No.
I might what you want to do is exclude Arabelle because she's little
Maybe
enough.
one chair at a time.
Which makes sense,
Well,
but
if
like,
we get all three,
when
then
everyone
only
here,
have to
the
go
only
once.
people at home. But like, I
That's
kind of
fair.
have to bring her.
And also, like, how...
I'm just saying.
Well, that was there. Got
Yeah, Dad was
Almost
there.
there. Got it.
But like, he was working. Because he has work.
There you go.
Remember? Job
Yeah,
is
we're
there.
gonna go one at a time.
Okay, we're going to keep going now, since we're mostly there. Oh my gosh. Okay then. That was awesome. All right.
Okay. You totally should have brought your little sister.
Anyway,
There we go.
so
Yay.
that being said,
Ah.
another big difference between these two types of writing styles is that adventure and action are the themes primarily in Western literature, whereas the themes in Eastern literature
tend to focus a lot more on overcoming oppression.
Oh! Sorry.
You're okay. I can understand that you've been very intense today. I love the energy. All right. But yes, so as a result, Western tends to be more like, let's fight the villain. Hi-ya! And then with Eastern, if there's a villain, it tends to be more about this villain is oppressing people and we want to be free.
That's something in one of my books.
And so it's a very different kind of vibe
Like
than
that.
it is if you were to do a Western vibe. Western is we get rid of the bad guy because he's bad. Eastern is we get rid of the bad guy because we want to be free. Different mindset. All right.
I feel like you could also incorporate Eastern and Western literature to make like one.
No,
Yes.
for sure. Hence why I was like, you can definitely mix and mesh these as much as you want. Let them influence you.
All the link click things I said. I said link click a lot.
Yes, you did. All right,
I
so
even drew it.
another thing.
We need to make a clip show that's just like every time she says that.
That would be hilarious.
No, we'll just edit this video and just have every single time you say that.
Yeah.
Someone do that because I'm not good with computers.
Neither am I.
I don't have an
right.
editing software. I'll ask my friend. I'll send it to her and I'll be
There we
like,
go.
yeah.
You want some help?
All right.
I got it.
So
Like you
the
could.
other aspect is the fact that Western literature tends to be a lot more of the ideal of either accomplishing your dreams or overcoming the villain. Whereas the ideal in Eastern literature tends to be a lot more about making life better. However, that may be, whether it's defeating someone who is being a terrible murderer, whether it's making your life better by doing something very inspiring or doing something that you love. Overall, you are finding a way to make life better, whether it's for many people or just yourself. All right, the last one that I want to talk about is the fact that emotions play a huge role in Eastern literature. However, they often tend to be subtle. Whereas emotions in Western literature, this is why we have dramas, tend to be a lot more intense, right? Where instead of it being like in an Eastern literature film, you might have someone who is like being cheated on and they're just like very subtly trying to hint at their spouse that they know they're being cheated on. Whereas in Western literature, it's like, I know you're cheating on me.
Crazy Rich Asians.
Very like intense.
Have you seen Crazy Rich Asians?
I have not, but I am
It's
familiar
so
with the idea.
good. I watched it with my family and
But
it was
yes,
so funny.
the idea though is that that's very much a cultural thing. In Eastern culture, you typically have your emotions very reserved and you're very much trying to be respectful while also showing your hand to what you know secretly.
Whoa.
But with Western, it's like, I know a secret and I can't keep it for more than 5 minutes.
Ah!
And I'm going to tell everyone.
That's me,
In the
except
most
I try
dramatic way
not to
possible.
do that because my friends confide in me. So.
But yeah, so that being said, there are a lot of differences here, culturally and societally and just in general stylistically between the two. However, like we were talking about earlier, that doesn't mean you can't be influenced by one or the other and use it to create something completely unique and your own. Feel free to take one from one and one from the other and mix and match. That's what makes it so much so that it speaks to us. Because of the fact that we find things that we enjoy and that we like, but we also find things that are different and alluring and interesting. And so it's important that we don't just say, oh, it all has to be this way or it all has to be that way. Find what works best for you. If you find that certain of these are more appealing to you than others, go with it. If you find that both have attributes that you're finding appealing, go for that too. All right. Do we have any questions? Serious questions, I'm going to clarify.
Yeah, Michael.
You should watch Crazy Rich Asians. That's my question.
That is not a question,
It is
but
a
I will
question.
keep it in mind.
What's your definition of a question?
A question is talking at all. That's
Nope.
Like, that's like,
A question has to end in a question mark if it was
it
in
does
a
end with a
dialogue.
question mark.
Nope,
It has
does
to
not.
be inquisitive.
Yeah, it does.
You have to be wanting
Yeah,
to
it
learn
does.
something.
That would end in a period. If I was
Have
editing
you
that, it would
watched
be a period.
Crazy Rich Asians?
Now
There's
that's
a question.
I said that.
So
No, you said you
need
should.
to.
Because I'm forcing my views on you.
You
Yes.
need to, and
Alright.
have you are
Does
very different
anyone
beginnings of a
else
sentence.
have a
You need
serious
to and
question?
have you watch Crazy Rich Asians.
Does anyone else have a question aside from you right now?
Do you know my name?
I do know
I
your name,
think
but
that-
I don't want to say names aloud on the video.
Oh.
We are
I
being
don't
recorded.
think that falls under serious
What
question.
is-
I'm just saying.
Look. I made friends.
Oh, look.
But yes.
I
crap.
I'm in flop.
Okay, define non-serious question, just because I've had some
What?
really weird ones.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Do you want a drink?
It's not really relevant to anything. It's just something I've
What
been
about
thinking
now?
about immortal people.
Okay, then we can definitely talk about that post video. This is more on theme. Any things that are on theme for today? Or are we all good?
Thank you.
Yes.
So what here, like Western and Eastern?
Excellent question. So Eastern is typically, I think this is an outdated word, but typically more Asian side of things, or Oriental would be the outdated word. But some people still use that.
Oriental?
Yes, Oriental is the outdated word. It
What
is
does
no
that
longer
mean?
politically correct. It's basically anyone from the Orient, aka Asia. Hence
Oh.
why I was like, that's technically not right. Just say
Yeah.
Asia. But but yes, so anyone from an Asian culture. So for example, Korean, Thailand would be considered in that. It would also include Japan, China, pretty much anyone in that general area of the world. Whereas Western is going to be pretty much Europe, America, Norway, UK,
America.
that kind of stuff. The funny thing is that Africa is kind of not included in that. I don't know why. I really don't. Most people consider Western as being, like I said, kind of like Europe and Northern and Southern America. Africa is, for some reason, I think it's because it's such a unique culture in and of itself. It's technically not Western or Eastern. It's just its own thing.
Africa.
It's its own thing. So yeah, so Eastern is everywhere that direction that isn't Africa, and Western is everywhere that direction that isn't Africa either, because Africa's its own thing.
Wait, but would that make Australia though?
Australia is technically Western because of the fact that it was settled heavily by Europeans.
Yeah,
So
that's what I thought. There's also like
it's
right
one of
next
those
to like
low-key
New
ones.
Zealand
I
and
know,
stuff.
right?
which
It's
would've
right
been-
next to all those. Yeah. But if they had stayed purely indigenous, I think it would count. But because of the fact that it was primarily settled by Europeans.
Except for the fact that the British had to take over literally everyone.
Oh no, yeah. So pretty much, if it was settled by Britain at any point heavily, it
Yeah.
probably is your Western.
And,
Yes.
and another question. So
Mhm.
like K-dramas.
K-dramas are Eastern.
What are K
Okay,
dramas?
but
Yeah.
like they
Korean
are also
dramas?
very
Oh.
like dramatic. So
True.
Like a little.
So they
They
definitely.
just
So the thing about K-dramas is that they took the heavy conflict, heavy drama aspect from Western, and then played it into their own Eastern culture.
So they're just like, okay, let's just move that.
Yes, they were just like, we like this specific thing in Western literature, and we're gonna adopt it and make it our own. Because it is different. If you watch a Western drama versus a K-drama, they are very different, but they also have a lot of similarities. So that's a great question. It is their own spin on our heavy drama conflict shows. Good point. I like that question. That was a very insightful question. Anyone else have Eastern versus Western writing a question? And I shouldn't really say versus because we're not doing against each other. We're just saying like these are the differences. No questions? Okay, then I'm going to turn the video off. Reminder that the Scary Story contest entries are due preferably by October 5th. I don't know when the actual date is. That's just my guess based on last year's date. It could be later than that, but if you're done by October 5th, then you're done early, even if it is later than that.
It'd just be done early.
Exactly, so
Like,
not a
it's
problem.
easy.
But yes, and then the one
I'll say
after
that
that is
when I
going to be
write on
first
the
chapter
days,
contest, so feel free to work on your first chapters. And then the one after that is
Already
going
got
to
my
be
first chapter.
a cozy mystery. Keep in mind that so cozy mystery is basically regular mystery, but you keep it low, funnily enough, less of the action, less of the intensity, less of the drama, and keep it more lighthearted and comedic. So think Psych, for instance.
Yeah.
That actually counts as a cozy mystery. If you've ever seen the show
No,
Psych.
like-
If you have not, then you can just watch one
Yeah.
clip and it'll pretty much tell you everything you
A
need to know
third
about
grader
that show.
could read your story and still be content and not have nightmares.
Yes, exactly. You don't give your readers nightmares or concerns about like, is this real? Will it come to get me? Or is this murder? Could this happen to me? Like instead, it's like, oh no, so and so got murdered. Let's solve the murder. Instead of being like, and he's bleeding everywhere. Like,
Graveyard book.
much less. Of it. Anyway,
I'm gonna kick you both.
so that being said, that's what a cozy mystery is. Keep in mind that the Scary Story contest only allows you to write 8 pages. However, it is any font, so long as it is readable. If we cannot read it, we will throw it out.
Nobody owns
So, as long as it is
Yes.
readable, and I don't mean like throw it out in a like aggressive way. I just mean like it will be disqualified because we can't read it.
No, she means chug it against the room into a flaming garbage can.
Absolutely not. But anyway, so it has to be a readable font, and if you are looking for extra space, I recommend Times New Roman 12-point font single spaced. That is the best way to make the best of your 8 pages. That is my
8
personal
pages?
recommendation.
Holy crap.
Yep, you are allowed to write 8 pages.
Dude,
However,
8 pages is nothing.
yeah, I was gonna say the funny thing is I actually lost 6,000 words, which technically, if you follow my double spaced Times New Roman rule, is 21 pages. Speaking of which, we're gonna discuss rules and regulations later because I'm changing a few of them because I've had a discussion with people and we've decided to change a few things. But that's a later date discussion. So as for now, we're gonna just talk about the fact that Spooky Scary Story has to be 8 pages. However you fit it on there is up to you. Just like I said, make sure it's readable. Don't put it in like size 0.2 font.
Or
I
those
can't read
weird
that.
cursive ones.
Or those weird cursive
Like,
ones that
ah!
I don't know. Like I can read cursive, but there are some cursive fonts that are just completely
I don't really
unreadable.
It's just
Um,
tails. Like all it is there's like just
all
there's
the
like a little
swoops.
loop and then
I
And
love those.
like it's pretty, yes. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, your reader needs to be able to read it.
It's really good for numbers too. Like
That is true. It's nice if you're doing numbers because then you automatically can assume what the number is, even if you can't read it. But yes, anyway, that being said, I'm going to turn the video off now. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask.
Are you seriously watching YouTube, Michael?
Take a couple colors.
Green just came out.